Nora didn't mean to curse the Alpha King to his face. She'd been having a spectacularly terrible day. Her employer had docked her wages again, her sister's medicine cost twice what she'd saved, and now some careless stranger in an expensive cloak had just knocked her market basket into a puddle of something she desperately hoped was only mud, so she cursed. Thoroughly. A whispered stream of profanity that would have made her late mother reach from the heavens and slap her mouth clean, but as her anger flared, something else flared with it. The mark hidden on her wrist, awake after years of careful silence. The man stopped mid-stride and turned. Nora's stomach dropped as she got her first real look at him. He was tall in a way that seemed to devour the space around him, with dark hair that fell just past his collar, and a face that belonged in marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic lines. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Gold, like honey held up to sunlight, and those eyes were fixed directly on her. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, dropping to her knees to salvage what she could. A turnip rolled past her hand and she grabbed for it desperately. I wasn't talking about—" "Yes, you were." His voice was deeper than she'd expected, touched with something that might have been amusement. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of cedar and winter air. That was quite the vocabulary. Waste of breath who should have been drowned at birth? That's a new one. Heat flooded her face. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the ruined vegetables. "My father was a sailor. I learned from the best." Clearly. She heard the rustle of fabric, and then he was crouching beside her, this wealthy stranger in his fine clothes, kneeling in market filth to help her gather scattered turnips. His hands were elegant but scarred, fighter's hands, Nora noted. "You don't have to," she started. "I know." He dropped a turnip into her basket with surprising gentleness. "But since I apparently possess all the grace and awareness of a drunken ox, your words, I believe, it seems only fair I make amends." She risked a glance at his face and found him smiling. Not the polite smile of nobility forced to interact with commoners, but something genuine, something that transformed his severe features into something devastating. "I really am sorry," Nora said, meaning it. "Today has been terrible," he offered. "Then let me make it better." He stood, offering his hand to help her up. "Have dinner with me tonight. I know a place that won't judge your turnip collection." Nora stared at his outstretched hand like it might bite her. "What?" "Dinner. You and me." His smile widened, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp to be entirely human. "Unless you have other plans?" She almost laughed. Her plans consisted of going back to the textile shop where she spent 14 hours a day hunched over a loom, eating stale bread for supper, and collapsing into a bed she shared with 2 other workers. "I don't even know your name," she said. "Max." He said it simply, like it was just a name. But Nora caught the way people were staring now, the way the crowd had created a careful circle of space around them. "You're—" The words died in her throat. "Having a very interesting morning, thanks to you." He was still holding his hand out, patient, waiting. "So, dinner?" Nora looked at his hand, then his face. His gold eyes held something she couldn't quite name, curiosity, but also something sharper beneath it, something that made her pulse kick up in warning. Maybe this was some bored royal's idea of entertainment. Humor the common girl who insulted him, then discard her by morning. But there was something else in his expression too, something almost like hunger? Not for her body, though. She saw appreciation flicker in his gaze when it traveled over her face. This was different, like he was searching for something specific and thought he might have found it in her. Against every instinct that screamed at her to run, Nora took his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and the moment their skin touched, something strange happened. A flicker of heat raced up her arm. for just a heartbeat, the mark on her wrist, the one she'd kept bound with cloth her entire life, burned beneath its wrappings. Max's eyes flashed, just for a second, but she saw it. His amber eyes grew brighter, like flame catching. He'd felt something too. Did he see her mark? Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. It tells me you want more stories like this. The Copper Bell, he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. On the corner of Market and 5th, 8 o'clock. Then he released her hand, stepped back, and walked away like he hadn't just turned her entire world sideways. Nora stood in the market, clutching her basket of turnips, and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Nora was preparing to ditch. She stood outside the Copper Bell at 10 minutes past 8, her heart racing, telling herself she could still turn around. Walk away. Forget the Alpha King had ever invited her to dinner. But then the door opened, and Max was there. He'd changed from his travel cloak into dark trousers and a white shirt that did absolutely nothing to hide the span of his shoulders. His hair was still damp, like he'd bathed recently, and when those gold eyes found hers, everything else seemed to fall away. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "Same. Yet here I am." His mouth curved. "What changed your mind?" "Curiosity." It was the truth. "And I've never been to the Copper Bell. Figured if I'm going to get murdered by royalty, might as well have a decent last meal." He laughed, a real laugh that sounded surprised, like he didn't do it often. "I promise not to murder you over dinner. After, perhaps, but not during." He winked to lighten the mood, but even though his words were light, something in his eyes didn't match the humor in his voice. They stayed sharp, assessing, like he was cataloging every micro-expression on her face. Predator watching prey, even while smiling. Nora's instincts prickled. She'd grown up on the docks, learned to read dangerous men by necessity, and everything about Max whispered danger, from the too controlled way he held himself, to the scars on his knuckles, to the way he angled his body just slightly between her and the exit. Not threatening, but certainly deliberate, like he'd already decided she wasn't leaving until he had what he wanted. "How considerate," she managed. He offered his arm, and after a final moment's hesitation, she took it. The same flicker of heat raced through her at the contact, making her breath catch. If he noticed, he didn't show it. Inside, the Copper Bell was everything the rumors promised. Polished. Wood, soft lamplight, the smell of roasted meat and expensive wine. A private room waited for them, small and intimate, with a table set for 2. Nora had never felt more out of place in her life. Her dress was clean but patched, her hands rough from years of loom work. She didn't belong here, and they both knew it. Max pulled out her chair himself, then settled across from her. In the lamplight, she could see him more clearly, the sharp line of his jaw, the way he moved with predatory grace even sitting still. "You're staring," he said, pouring wine. "So are you." He slid a glass toward her. "Tell me about yourself, Nora." She blinked. "How do you know my name?" "You said it, in the market, when you were cursing my very existence." Had she? The moment was a blur of embarrassment. "Right. Well, there's not much to tell. I work at Harvard's textile shop. Before that, I helped my father on the docks until he died." "I'm sorry." She shrugged, uncomfortable with sympathy. "It was 4 years ago. Fever took him quick." She sipped the wine to have something to do with her hands. It was better than anything she'd ever tasted, and she had to resist the urge to down the entire glass in one go like she was back at the docks with her father's crew. "Act like a lady," she told herself. "What about you? What does an Alpha King do when he's not getting cursed at in markets?" The usual tedium: attend council meetings, negotiate treaties, hunt down prophecies about the end of the kingdom. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. Nora nearly choked on her wine. I'm sorry, what? Bad joke. But something in his eyes said it wasn't entirely a joke. Mostly, I try to keep various factions from killing each other. It's remarkably exhausting. Their food arrived: roasted duck, glazed vegetables, bread so fresh it steamed when she tore it open. Nora tried not to look too eager as she ate, but she was starving. She'd skipped breakfast to save money for her sisters. Medicine and lunch had been an apple. Max watched her with that same unsettling focus. When did you last have a proper meal? I eat fine. That's not what I asked. She met his gaze, defensive. Why are you asking? I'm not sure yet. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more careful. Most people are nervous around me. They watch their words, their expressions. Nobody's ever cursed to my face. You knocked over my turnips. I did. His mouth twitched. You're refreshing, Nora. Nora didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know what to do with any of this. The expensive meal, the private room, the way he looked at her like she was more than just a textile worker. Why am I really here? She asked quietly. Max went still. For a moment, she thought he would lie. Then he leaned forward, elbows on the table, and the intensity in his gaze made her pulse skip. When you cursed me, something happened. Your eyes flashed, just for a second, like lightning behind clouds. I need to know if you're who I think you are. Ice slid down her spine. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? He wasn't smiling anymore. Show me your wrist, Nora, the one you keep wrapped. Her hand moved instinctively to cover it, clutching the cloth binding. It's just an old burn. It's not a burn. His voice was gentle but firm. I've spent 5 years searching for someone with a very specific gift. And when we touched in the market, I felt it. Your mark recognized me. Panic clawed up her throat. Her mother had been burned alive for her gift. Burned while Nora watched from the crowd, 6 years old and screaming. Since then, she'd learned to hide the mark, hide everything that made her different. I should go. She stood abruptly, chair scraping back. Max rose with her, moving around the table with fluid speed. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. I'm not going to hurt you. That's what they told my mother before they lit the pyre. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, then understanding. Your mother was a seer. Nora felt tears burn her throat but refused to let them fall. She saw things, futures that might be. People thought she was a witch. They killed her for it. Did you inherit her gift? She bolted, knocked her chair back and ran for the door, survival instinct overriding everything else. Her mother's screams echoed in her memory. She wouldn't end up like that, wouldn't let another powerful man decide she was too dangerous to live. Max caught her before she made it 3 steps. One moment she was running, the next his arm was around her waist, pulling her back against his chest with immovable strength. Not bruising, but inescapable. She struggled, and he turned her to face him, backing her against the wall with his body blocking any escape route. Let me go. Breathe, he said quietly, his thumb brushing over the cloth binding her wrist. I'm not them, Nora. I don't want to hurt you, but I need to know if you're the one from the prophecy. What prophecy? He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There's a prophecy about someone with the seer's mark, someone who will either save or destroy the kingdom. I've been searching for years because I need to understand which it is. I need to... He stopped, jaw tightening. Need to what? But even as she asked, understanding crashed over her like a tidal wave. You need to kill them, before they can destroy anything? His silence was answer enough. Nora jerked her hand away, backing toward the door. So this was what? Reconnaissance? Get the potentially dangerous seer alone so you can figure out how much of a threat she is? It's more complicated than that, Nora. Is it? Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. You thought I might be this person from your prophecy, so you took me to dinner to… what? Confirm it before you execute me? Nora, thank you for the meal, Your Majesty. It was lovely, really. She wrenched open the door. Good luck finding your prophecy person. I hope they're everything you're looking for. She was down the stairs and out into the street before he could stop her. She ran, through alleys she knew by heart, across squares where merchants were closing up shop, past the fountain where she'd played as a child. She didn't stop until she reached the cramped room she shared above the textile shop, lungs burning, tears finally spilling over. Her wrist throbbed beneath its bindings. The mark knew. Somehow, impossibly, it knew she'd found something important. Found him. And he was hunting her. Nora didn't sleep that night. She lay in the narrow bed, listening to her roommates snore, and tried to figure out what to do. Run. That was the obvious answer. Take what little she had and disappear into another city, another kingdom. Start over somewhere the Alpha King's reach didn't extend. But her sister was here. Lydia, 2 years younger and wasting away from lung fever. The medicine cost everything Nora earned, and it still wasn't enough. If she ran, Lydia would die. So running wasn't an option. Which left… what? Hope that Max forgets about her? Not likely, given the way he'd looked at her. She touched the cloth on her wrist. Beneath it, the mark pulsed with warmth. It had been quiet for years, manageable, but tonight it felt alive, active. Her mother's voice echoed in memory. The mark chooses its own time to wake, little love. When it does, you'll have choices to make, important ones. Nora hadn't understood then. She'd been 6 and terrified and watching her mother burn. She understood now. The knock came at dawn. Not on her door, but on the shop's main entrance, 3 floors down. Nora heard it in her restless sleep, heard the proprietor Harver grumbling as he answered, heard the deep voice that made her stomach drop. Max. She dressed quickly, braided her hair, with shaking hands. By the time she made it downstairs, Harver was bowing and scraping, practically prostrating himself. Of course, Your Majesty. Right away, Your Majesty. She's an excellent worker, very reliable. I'd like to speak with her, Max said. He was back in traveling clothes, but somehow he still looked regal. His eyes found Nora on the stairs. Privately. Harver practically shoved her toward the back room, then fled. Nora crossed her arms, trying to look braver than she felt. Come to finish what you started? I came to apologize. He moved closer, and she noticed the shadows under his eyes, like he hadn't slept either. Last night was… I handled it badly. I should have been honest from the beginning, told you why I was really interested. He dragged a hand through his hair, frustrated. But I wasn't expecting you to be… He stopped. To be what? Like this. His gaze was too intense, too raw. I wasn't expecting to actually like you, Nora. To enjoy the way you don't back down, even when you're terrified. The way you cursed me without a second thought. The way you… He stopped again, jaw tightening. It was supposed to be simple. Confirm if you were the one. Make a decision based on duty and prophecy. But nothing about you is simple. Her heart was doing complicated things in her chest. Maybe this was what foolish prey felt in the final moment before they surrendered. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to hurt you, but I do need your help. He pulled a folded parchment from his coat. This is the prophecy. Read it. Then decide if you'll come with me to the castle and help me figure out what it really means. She took the parchment with trembling fingers and read, When the seer's mark awakens in shadow and flame, the marked one shall stand at the kingdom's breaking point. In their hands lies both salvation and ruin. Should they choose the path of ash, the old world burns. Should they choose the path of blood, a new world rises. The Alpha King must decide. Kill the marked before the choice is made, or risk everything on faith. The words made her blood run cold. This says you're supposed to kill me. Yes. And you want me to come to your castle, voluntarily? Max stepped closer, and his voice dropped to something rough and honest. Look, I've spent years believing I'd have to kill an innocent person to save thousands, knowing I'd do it because duty demanded it. But then I saw you in that market, and suddenly the person I was supposed to kill had a name, a face, a life that mattered. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. I don't believe the prophecy has to end the way everyone thinks it does. There's something we're missing, some answer buried in the text that no one's found yet, but I can't find it alone. I need your help. Why should I trust you? Nora, I'm telling you the truth when a lie would be easier. His hand dropped from her face. I could have dragged you out of that market the second I suspected you. Instead, I'm standing here asking. She wanted to argue, but he wasn't wrong. He'd had opportunities, plenty of them. And because you already know something's happening between us, he said it plainly. You felt it when we touched, and you're feeling it now. She felt her face warm. God, was she really that obvious? The mark on her wrist burned in response, responding to his proximity like a compass finding north. Whatever this was, prophecy, magic, something else entirely, it wasn't one-sided. If I help you, she said carefully, what happens after? When we figure out the prophecy, or don't? Do I just go back to the textile shop? That depends on what we find and what you want, but I'll make you a deal. Come with me for 1 week. Help me research the prophecy. Use your seer abilities to understand it better. In exchange, I'll pay enough to cover your sister's medicine for a year, and if at the end of that week you want to leave, I'll let you go, no matter what. Even if the prophecy says I'm the destruction? His jaw tightened. Even then, 1 week, Nora. Help me understand what we're dealing with. Then you're free. She thought of Lydia, coughing blood into rags. 1 week and she could save her, maybe even heal her. She hoped she wasn't just falling for pretty words from a dashing face. Dangerous men make you feel chosen, her mother used to say. They make you feel like the exception, right up until the moment you realize you're just another mark. Nora looked at Max, at the earnestness in his eyes, the careful way he held himself back, giving her space to decide. She wanted him to be different, wanted to be right about the sincerity she heard in his voice. Please let him be the exception. 1 week, she agreed, but I want it in writing, and payment up front for Lydia's medicine. Max's mouth curved, practical. Survivor's instinct. He pulled out another parchment, this one blank, and borrowed a pen from Harver's desk. His handwriting was surprisingly elegant as he wrote out the terms. 1 week. Full cooperation from both parties. Payment guaranteed regardless of outcome. Your freedom non-negotiable. He signed it with a flourish, then offered her the pen. Nora read it twice, checking for loopholes. Found none, then signed. The moment the ink dried, she felt something shift in the air. Max felt it too. His eyes flashed gold, and he inhaled sharply. What was that? She asked. A binding. The contract is more than paper now. He rolled the parchment carefully. We're both held to its terms by magic. I didn't know you could do that. There's a lot you don't know about me yet. He offered his hand. Ready? Nora took his outstretched palm. This time, when their skin touched, the heat was more intense. The mark on her wrist blazed hot enough that she gasped. Max's grip tightened, steadying her, and she saw his own wrist glow gold beneath his sleeve. "You have it too?" she gasped. Not the seer's mark, but something adjacent. He didn't let go. "My bloodline has its own magic. It's been dormant for generations, but around you—" He trailed off, staring at their joined hands. "It recognizes you. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet." He looked up, and something tender flickered across his face, raw and unguarded in a way that made her chest ache. "But I'm starting to hope it's good." The castle was carved from mountain stone, all sharp edges and defensive walls, but inside, tapestries softened the harsh lines, fires burned in every hearth, and people moved with purposeful ease. A woman named Val showed Nora to her room, a space larger than the entire textile shop, with a bed piled in furs and a window overlooking peaks that touched the clouds. "His Majesty said you're to have anything you need," Val said, kind despite Nora's obvious discomfort. "Bath's being drawn. I'll bring food shortly. Just ring if you need anything." After Val left, Nora stood in the center of the room and tried to process what she'd done. She'd agreed to help the Alpha King understand a prophecy about her potentially destroying his kingdom. She was in his castle, under his protection, or his surveillance, depending how you looked at it. And the terrifying part was that she mostly trusted him. Maybe she shouldn't, but something in her, the mark, her instincts, some deeper knowing, whispered that Max would keep his word. She unwrapped her wrist for the first time in public space, staring at the mark in afternoon light. It was beautiful in a way, intricate symbols that seemed to shift and breathe, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. Her mother had had the same mark, had tried to teach Nora to use it before the village decided she was too dangerous to live. Nora traced one of the symbols and felt a flicker of something. Vision sense, her mother had called it. The ability to see what was, what could be, what might never happen. She'd suppressed it for so long, hidden from it, terrified of becoming her mother's fate. But maybe it was time to stop hiding. Max found her in the library that evening, surrounded by ancient texts. "I didn't expect you to start so quickly," he said from the doorway. Nora looked up, pushing hair from her face. "You're paying me to help. Might as well begin." She gestured at the books. "These are all prophecies?" "Among other things, records of seers, historical accounts, interpretations." He moved into the room, and she was struck by how he filled space in a way that made her aware of every inch between them. "Find anything interesting?" "Lots of doom and gloom, very uplifting." She held up a particularly dire passage. "This one says a seer will drown the world in blood and shadow." "That one's been debunked. Turned out to be about a very nasty storm, not an actual apocalypse." "So, prophecies can be wrong?" "Prophecies are easily misunderstood." Maxine settled into the chair across from her, close enough that she caught his scent again. "That's what I'm hoping, that the one about you is misunderstood too." "You mean you're hoping you won't have to kill me after all?" "I'm not going to kill you, Nora." The certainty in his voice was absolute. "Prophecy or not, I've made that decision." Her heart stuttered. "That's not what you said this morning." "This morning, I was still trying to convince myself duty came first." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But the truth is, from the moment you took my hand in that market, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it." "Knew what?" "That killing you would destroy me far more than any prophecy ever could." His eyes held hers. "So, we find another way. Together." The air between them felt charged. Nora's mark hummed against her skin, responding to his voice. What if there is no other way? Then we make one. He reached across the space between them, offering his hand palm up, an invitation. I need to understand your gift, how the visions work. Will you show me? She hesitated. Her visions were private, often painful. Letting someone else in felt more intimate than anything she'd ever done. But Max waited patiently, not pushing, just offering. Nora took his hand. When their skin connected, her vision sense flared. Not a full vision, but something gentler. She felt his emotions as clearly as her own. Determination, fear, and underneath it all, a fierce protectiveness that took her breath away. You're worried, she said softly. Constantly. His thumb brushed her knuckles. For the kingdom, for my people. But now, he paused. Now I'm worried about you too. His voice was rough. About keeping you safe while we figure this out. About what happens if we can't. The honesty in his words made her chest tight. I'm not used to people worrying about me. Then you've been around the wrong people. She smiled despite herself. They sat like that, hands joined, while evening deepened outside. Nora found herself studying him in the lamplight, the sharp line of his jaw, the way shadows played across his features, the small scar above his right eyebrow. How did you get that? She gestured at the scar. Training accident when I was 12. My beta, Dane, accidentally hit me with a practice sword. Max's mouth quirked. He felt terrible. I still give him grief about it. You've known him a long time then. Since childhood. He's steadying when everything else is chaos. Is it often chaos? More than I'd like. He turned her hand over, tracing the lines of her palm. The touch was absent, gentle. Being Alpha King means everyone wants something from you. Favors, decisions, judgment. Sometimes I forget there's a person underneath the crown. Is that what you liked about me cursing you? That I treated you like a person? A clumsy person who should watch where he's going, but yes. His smile was real now, warm. You didn't see the crown, just saw someone who'd wronged you and needed to be told. To be fair, those were very good turnips. He laughed, and the sound did dangerous things to her pulse. I'll buy you better turnips, a whole cart of them. That's not necessary. Maybe not, but I want to. His expression turned serious. I want to give you things, Nora. Safety, comfort, choices you've never had. And I know that seems odd from someone who's supposed to be deciding if you're a threat, but I can't seem to help it. Her breath caught. Max, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. He released her hand, standing. It's late. You should rest. We'll start properly tomorrow. He was at the door before she found her voice. Max? He turned back. I want to give you things too, she said quietly. Understanding, maybe. A way out of this prophecy, and she stopped, not sure how to finish. And I'm glad you're not who I thought you were. Something blazing and unguarded flashed in his eyes. Who did you think I was? Someone who'd let duty destroy him. But you're not. You're someone who's trying to find another way. You make me want to try, he said roughly. Then he left before she could respond, leaving her alone with her racing heart and the mark that pulsed warm against her skin. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm that felt both strange yet natural. Mornings, they worked together in the library. Max showed her ancient texts while she practiced opening her vision sense intentionally instead of letting it ambush her. The first few attempts left her drained and shaking, but Max was always there, bringing water, giving her time to recover, his presence a steady anchor. Don't force it, he said on the second day, catching her when she swayed. His hands were gentle on her shoulders. Let it come naturally. It doesn't feel natural. It feels like drowning. Then let me be your surface. He guided her to sit, then settled beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. Try again. But this time, use me as your anchor. If it gets too intense, focus on my voice. On this. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. Nora closed her eyes and reached for vision sense again. This time, when it rose up, wild and overwhelming, she gripped Max's hand and heard his voice cutting through the chaos. I've got you. You're safe. Come back. And she did. The visions receded enough that she could breathe, think. But this time she'd seen something, a fragment of a possible future, two paths diverging. I saw it, she gasped. The choice the prophecy mentions. There are two paths, and they're both. She stopped, shuddering. Both what? Terrible. Beautiful. And I don't know which is which. Max pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling her head. We'll figure it out, I promise. She let herself lean into him, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. This was dangerous, growing to trust him, to crave his presence. But for once, she didn't pull away. Afternoons, she explored the castle while Max attended council meetings. She found the training yards where warriors sparred with lethal grace, the kitchens where cooks prepared feasts, the gardens where impossible things grew in mountain cold. And everywhere, people watched her with curiosity, but not hostility. The Alpha King's guest, here for mysterious research. They didn't know she was the subject of that research. Evenings, Max found her wherever she'd wandered. Sometimes they talked about his childhood, her father, the kingdom's troubles. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, hands touching, their marks humming in response. On the third night, he found her on the battlements watching sunset paint the mountains gold. Val said you skipped dinner, he said, joining her at the wall. I wasn't hungry. Liar. He held out an apple. Here. She took it, touched by the simple gesture. You don't have to take care of me, you know. I know, but I want to. He leaned against the stone beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. What's on your mind? The prophecy, the visions, all of it. She bit into the apple to buy time. In my vision today, I saw two futures. In one, there's fire and destruction, everything burning. In the other, there's blood and change, violent but transformative. I'm not sure which path leads where, if either's a good option. The path of ash versus the path of blood, Max said quietly. Those are the prophecy's words. Right, but which one is salvation, and which is ruin? She turned to face him. What if we choose wrong? Then we deal with the consequences together. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, intimate. But I don't think we'll choose wrong. How can you be so certain? Because I trust you. His hand lingered against her cheek. Your instincts, your heart, and because... He hesitated for a beat. Because I don't think you're meant to choose alone. I think we're meant to choose together. Her pulse skipped. What do you mean? The prophecy says the Alpha King must decide, but it also says the marked one stands at the breaking point with salvation and ruin in their hands. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. What if it's not separate decisions? What if we're supposed to choose together? That's not what it says. Prophecies are often cryptic, deliberately so. He was close enough to her now that she could see gold flecks in his eyes. What if the real answer is partnership? Two people, two kinds of magic, one choice. I think you're reaching. It could be wish fulfillment on my part, or maybe I'm seeing what was there all along. His voice dropped. We're connected, Nora. Our marks respond to each other. Your visions are clearer when I'm near. My bloodline magic has woken for the first time in generations because of you. I don't think that's a coincidence." She wanted to believe him with an intensity that frightened her. "And if you're wrong, if I make the wrong choice and destroy everything?" "You won't, Nora. You can't know that." His forehead touched hers, the gesture achingly gentle. "I can because I know you. 3 days isn't long, but my wolf feels like it's known you for much longer. You're careful with power, protective of people weaker than you, willing to sacrifice for those you love. That's not someone who'd choose destruction. People said my mother was good too, before they burned her. Your mother saw one possible future and tried to warn people. They killed her for it because they were afraid." His hands framed her face now, holding her like she was precious. "I'm not afraid of you, Nora. I'm in awe of you." Her breath hitched. "Max, I know it's too soon. I know we've only just met, but I need you to understand something." His eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her chest tight. "In that market, when you looked at me like I was just some careless fool who'd knocked into you, not a king, just a person who needed to apologize, it really took me aback. No one's ever looked at me like that, like I'm just a man. Fallible. Real." His eyes met hers, and the loneliness there was staggering. "I didn't realize how much I'd been starving for it." "That's just our marks responding to each other," she said, but her voice shook. "Is it?" His thumb traced her lower lip, feather light. "Then why does it feel like this? Why do I think about you constantly? Why does your smile make me forget council meetings and your laugh make me want to hear it again and again?" "Because you're trying to figure out if I'm going to destroy your kingdom." "You've already destroyed something far more personal, Nora. Every wall I've built, every protection I've put between myself and feeling too much, you walked through all of it without even trying. And the strange part is that I don't want those walls back." Nora's heart was doing impossible things. Her mark stirred against her wrist, pacing restlessly like a caged thing, urging her forward. She wanted to close the distance between them, wanted to touch his face, trace the line of his jaw, kiss away the vulnerability in his expression. The wanting was almost painful. "This is a bad idea. We should focus on breaking this prophecy." "Maybe we can have both." His forehead still rested against hers, his breath warm on her lips. "The prophecy matters, but so do you." His thumb traced along her jaw. "I know you work yourself to exhaustion for a sister you rarely mention, but clearly love desperately. I know you hide your gifts to stay safe, but you're willing to use them to help me despite the risk." His voice roughened. "And I know that when I touch you, everything makes sense in a way it never has before. So maybe understanding this, understanding us, is part of breaking the prophecy. Maybe we can't solve one without the other." The pragmatic voice in her reminded herself that he'd started this as reconnaissance, that she was here because of a prophecy, that in 4 more days she was supposed to leave. But the mark on her wrist pulsed hot and insistent, drowning out reason with pure want. The urging in her veins won. She closed the distance and kissed him, pressed her mouth to his before doubt could stop her. Max went perfectly still, a sharp inhale through his nose. Then his hands came up to frame her face like she was something breakable, and he kissed her back with a hunger that made her knees weak. He tasted like wine and winter air, and when she opened to him with a soft sound, his control cracked. One hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back, while the other pressed against her lower back, holding her closer until no space remained between them. His lips were softer than she'd expected, his touch reverent despite the leashed strength she felt in his frame. The marks on both their wrists flared hot enough that she gasped against his mouth. Max pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes blazing gold. "That's never happened before," he said, Are marks responding? No, me wanting someone so much it physically hurts. His thumb traced her swollen lips. Tell me to stop, Nora. Tell me this is too fast, too much, and I'll pull back. I'll give you space. What if I don't want space? His control visibly cracked. He kissed her again, harder this time, backing her against the stone wall with careful intensity. She felt the cold rock against her back and his heat along her front, the contrast making her dizzy. His mouth moved from her lips to her jaw, down the column of her throat, and she arched into him with a soft sound that made him groan. We should stop, he said against her neck, even as his hands mapped her waist, her ribs, the curve of her hip. Before I forget every good intention I've ever had. Maybe I don't want you to be good. He pulled back to look at her, pupils blown wide, breathing hard. Nora. 4 more days, she said, holding his gaze. That's all we have. 4 days before I'm supposed to leave, before we figure out what the prophecy really means. I don't want to waste them being careful. You're not thinking clearly. The marks, the magic. The marks aren't deciding this. I am. She pulled him down by his shirt collar, bringing his mouth close to hers. Max shuddered, his forehead dropping to her shoulder. You're going to destroy me. Is that a yes? He laughed, the sound pained. It's a, give me a minute to remember how to think. He pulled back, putting deliberate space between them. I want you, more than I've ever wanted anything, but I need you to be sure. Need to know this isn't just magic or proximity or... It's not. She stepped forward, closing the distance again. I've watched too many people run out of time. Seen what happens when you wait for the right moment that never comes. Her hand found his chest. 4 days might be all we get. I'm not spending them wondering what if. Max cupped her face in both hands, his touch achingly gentle. Then we figure it out together. He kissed her softly, sweetly. But we do it honestly. No more secrets between us. No more secrets, she agreed. He kissed her again, then pulled back with visible effort. Come on. Before I forget, I'm supposed to be a gentleman. They walked back through the castle hand in hand, and Nora felt lighter than she had in years. Maybe it was reckless. Maybe she'd regret it. But for now, with Max's hand warm in hers and the mark humming contentment against her skin, she let herself hope. But fate would have other plans. On the 4th day, everything changed. Nora was in the library alone. Max had a council meeting he couldn't postpone, when she found a text she hadn't noticed before. It was tucked behind other volumes, its spine so worn the title was illegible. She only found it because it had slipped between 2 shelves, hidden for who knew how long. The pages were brittle with age, written in the ancient seer language her mother had taught her. She translated slowly, her heart pounding as the words revealed themselves. The prophecy of the marked one is incomplete in common tongue. The true text speaks of 2 paths, 2 choices, 2 souls. The seer marked in vision sense must join with the alpha marked in blood sense. Together they form the bridge between old magic and new rule. Apart, they are vulnerable. United, they are transformation itself. The path of ash destroys the corrupt foundation so new growth may rise from clean soil. The path of blood transforms from within, using old structures to birth new possibility. Neither path is wrong. Neither path is right. The choice must be made in unity, with full understanding of consequence. Beware the one who would see them choose separately, for division serves only those who profit from chaos. Nora's pulse quickened. She flipped back to the common tongue translation that everyone used, the one that had convinced Max he might need to kill her. The word join had been translated as face. Unity had become opposition. And the entire final warning about division had been omitted completely. This wasn't interpretation. This was deliberate mistranslation. She read both versions again, her hands shaking. The prophecy wasn't about her destroying the kingdom or him stopping her. It was about them choosing together, as partners, how to handle whatever crisis was coming. The path of ash, the path of blood. Two options, neither inherently good or evil, and someone had twisted the words to make Max think he had to kill her before she could act alone. Someone who wanted them divided. Someone who profited from chaos. She was still staring at the text when Max's beta, Dane, entered the library. "His Majesty asked me to check on you," he said pleasantly. Nora's instincts prickled. "I'm all right, just reading." "Find anything interesting?" He moved closer, and she noticed how he positioned himself between her and the door. "Not really. Lots of old history." She closed the book casually, but her pulse kicked up. Something was wrong. "That's a shame. I was hoping you'd discover something useful." Dane's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though between us, I'm glad you haven't." "What do you mean?" "I mean that little prophecy has been very useful to me. Kept Max distracted for 5 years while I consolidated power, made the right alliances, positioned myself perfectly." He drew a knife, beautiful and deadly. "And then you had to show up and complicate things." Ice slid down Nora's spine. "You're the one who mistranslated the prophecy." "Guilty. Though to be fair, I didn't mistranslate it so much as edit out the inconvenient parts." He moved closer. "The part about unity, about choosing together. Couldn't have Max realizing the prophecy was actually about partnership. Much better to have him think he needed to kill the Seert." "Why? Isn't it obvious?" He tilted his head like he was explaining something to a child. "I guess you're not as clever as I thought. A conflicted, distracted king is easy to manipulate. And when he eventually killed you, or you killed him, whichever came first, I'd be perfectly positioned to step in, restore order, become the hero the kingdom needed." His smile was cold. "I've been planning this for years, Nora. I'm not letting you ruin it now." She backed away, but he moved like a strike of lightning. The knife slashed across her ribs before she could even raise her hands, white-hot agony that punched the air from her lungs. She gasped, choking on pain, stumbling against the bookshelf as her vision tunneled. "Don't worry," Dane said, his voice still that horrible, pleasant tone. "I'll make it look like you attacked first. Poor Max, forced to defend himself against the seer who went mad with power. So tragic." He stepped closer, knife dripping red. "He'll never forgive himself. It's perfect, really." Blood soaked through her dress, hot and sticky. Her legs threatened to give out, but beneath the pain, her mark ignited, not just warm, but burning, alive with something ancient and furious. Power surged up through her veins like wildfire, vision sense mixed with something older, more raw. Her mother's voice echoed, "In dire need, the mark protects its bearer." Nora threw her hand up on pure instinct, and blinding light exploded from her palm. The blast caught Dane square in the chest. He flew backward like he'd been struck by a battering ram, his body slamming into the stone wall with a sickening crack. The impact spiderwebbed the stone. His knife skittered across the floor, useless. Nora didn't wait to see if he'd get up. She ran, one hand pressed to her bleeding side, her mark still blazing hot against her wrist, lighting her path through the darkened halls. She made it halfway down the hall before her legs betrayed her. The wound wasn't deep, but blood loss and the violent surge of untrained power had hollowed her out. Her vision swam. She stumbled, barely catching herself against the cold stone wall, leaving a crimson smear. Then Max was there. He rounded the corner at a dead run and froze, his eyes locking onto her bleeding side, her pale face, then snapping to Dane staggering out of the library behind her. Something terrible shifted in his expression. The warmth, the humanity, everything that made him Max drained away in an instant. What remained was pure apex predator. Dane. His voice was so quiet it was terrifying, soft as a blade sliding from its sheath. Explain. The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop. Nora could feel his wolf rising to the surface, could sense the violence coiled in every muscle, barely leashed. This wasn't the man who'd held her gently. This was the king who'd unified a fractured kingdom through strength and will. This was the alpha who could kill without hesitation. Dane straightened, wiping blood from his mouth, but even he looked uncertain now. Your Majesty, she attacked? Don't. Max cut him off, taking a step forward. The movement was perfectly controlled, perfectly calm. Somehow that made it worse. Don't insult me by lying. Max, listen. You swore loyalty. Max's eyes blazed gold, his wolf bleeding through to the surface. Power rolled off him in suffocating waves, making the air crackle. You've been my friend since we were children, my brother, and you put a knife in her. His voice broke on the last word, just for a second, before the rage swallowed it whole. I did this for the kingdom. Dane's composure finally cracked, desperation bleeding into his voice. That prophecy says she'll destroy everything. I was protecting. You were protecting your own ambitions. Max's voice dropped to something deadly quiet, and the sudden shift was like watching a storm go silent before it unleashed. How long have you been planning this? Dane's jaw tightened, but no words came out. How long? The stones shook beneath their feet, ancient magic responding to his fury. Dust rained from the ceiling. Since your parents died, Dane said, his mask finally shattering. Since you took that throne and became everything they wanted instead of the friend I grew up with. You changed, Max. Became someone I didn't recognize. Someone who didn't need me anymore. Someone who... His voice turned bitter. Someone who'd choose her over duty, over reason, over me. So you decided to destroy me? I decided to save the kingdom from you. Dane's eyes were wild now. You're weak, letting prophecies guide you, searching for some seer instead of ruling. And now you're what? Falling for her? The woman who's supposed to end everything? That's not strength, that's love. Max said it simply. And you're right, it's made me weak in some ways. Made me question things I never questioned before. But it's also made me stronger in ways you'll never understand. He looked at Nora, and his expression softened. Are you all right? I found the real prophecy, she said through gritted teeth. The complete one. Dane mistranslated it to make you think you had to kill me. But the real text says we're supposed to choose together, that we're stronger united. Something blazed in Max's eyes, understanding, relief, and a fierce joy. Together. Together, she confirmed. Then her knees buckled. Max caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her easily. Get a healer, he snapped at the guards who'd appeared, and take Dane to the cells. We'll deal with him after I know she's all right. The next few hours were a blur. A healer cleaned and bandaged her wound. Not too deep, but still painful. The healer's hands were gentle, but each touch sent fire through her ribs. Nora bit down on a leather strap and tried not to scream, tried not to see Dane's blade flashing again behind her eyelids. Max's hand gripped hers, grounding her, keeping her present. When she whimpered, despite herself, his thumb traced circles over her knuckles. Almost done, he murmured. You're doing so well. When they were finally alone, he pulled her carefully against his chest. I thought I'd lost you, he said roughly. When I saw the blood, I'm all right. You're hurt, because I was blind to what was right in front of me. His arms tightened. Dane was my oldest friend. I trusted him completely. Never saw his resentment, his ambitions, and he nearly killed you for it. But he didn't. I'm here. She pulled back to look at him. And now we know the truth about the prophecy, about what we're supposed to do. Choose together. Max cupped her face gently. The prophecy says we're stronger united, that we transform things not separately, but as partners. The path of ash or the path of blood, Nora said. Destruction or transformation, and we decide which, together. But decide what, exactly? The prophecy talks about a breaking point, but what's breaking? Nora closed her eyes, reaching for her vision sense. This time, with Max's hands on her, the sight came differently, not in symbolic flashes or cryptic images, but sharp and tactical. Real. The council chamber materialized behind her eyelids. She could see faces she recognized from what Max shared in previous nights. Lord Gaston arguing for higher taxes on the outer territories. Lady Thelma dismissing reports of unrest. Commander Rhodes quietly tallying which battalions were loyal to the crown versus loyal to their regional lords. The rot wasn't dramatic. It was bureaucratic. Death by 1,000 small corruptions, each one justified as necessary. Then the vision shifted. The outer territories, where discontent had been simmering for years, farmers unable to afford seed because of tariffs, villages abandoned when the crown withdrew support, young people with no future joining militia groups that promised change through violence. She saw the threads connecting everything. Dane hadn't been working alone. There were others in the council feeding instability, profiting from chaos, positioning themselves for the moment when everything fractured. It was already breaking. The question was whether they'd control how. I see it, she breathed, opening her eyes. The kingdom's fracturing. Your council is compromised. Not all of them, but enough. The outer territories are organizing. There's going to be a revolt. She gripped his arms. And we have to decide. Do we let the system collapse and rebuild from the ground up? Or do we gut the corruption and transform what's left before it's too late? How long do we have? Days, maybe a week. She opened her eyes. The crisis is coming regardless, but how we respond to it, that's our choice. Max was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. If we choose the path of blood, transformation instead of destruction, it means committing to this kingdom, to leading it, changing it, being part of it for years to come. His eyes held hers. It means you can't leave in 3 days like we agreed. It means staying with me. Her heart stuttered. Max, I'm not saying you have to choose that path because of me, he continued. If burning it all down is the right answer, we'll do that together too. But I need you to know, if we transform from within, it requires both of us. Your vision sense to see corruption, my authority to root it out. Your magic and mine, working in partnership, forever. He pulled back slightly, giving her space. So I'm asking, Nora, not as an alpha king to a subject, not as someone bound by a prophecy, just as a man who's fallen too hard and fast for a woman who cursed him in a market. Do you want this? This life? This choice, me? If you don't, I can find another way. She looked at him, at the hope and fear warring in his expression, at how carefully he was holding himself back, waiting for her answer. I'm terrified, she admitted. I don't know how to be what a queen needs to be. I don't know politics or diplomacy or how to navigate a court that's going to hate me for being a commoner. She took a breath. But I think that's what the kingdom needs right now. Not someone who already knows how to play the game. Someone who remembers what it's like outside the palace walls. She stepped closer, taking his hand. So yes, I want this. When I think about the future, you're in it. And I want to see what we can build when we stop being afraid. Max's expression transformed. Relief and joy and something deeper, rawer. Are you sure? No. She laughed softly, pulling him down until their foreheads touched. But I'm doing it anyway. We're choosing it together. Your kingdom isn't perfect, but it's worth saving, worth transforming into something better. Our kingdom, he corrected quietly, his hands settling at her waist. If we do this, if you're really staying, then we're equals in this, in everything. The word staying caught in her chest, made something warm unfurl there. Our kingdom, she whispered. He kissed her then, and it felt different from before, less desperate, more deliberate, like a vow made without words. When they finally broke apart, both unsteady, the marks on their wrists were glowing so brightly they cast shadows on the walls. That's new, Nora said. The marks know. Max studied the light, wonder in his expression. We've chosen, made our decision together. The prophecy is fulfilling itself. So what happens now? Now we save a kingdom. He helped her stand carefully, mindful of her wound. We root out the corruption, stop the coup before it starts, and transform this place into something worthy of you. Worthy of us, she corrected. His smile broke across his face, unguarded and real. Worthy of us. The next 3 days were chaos. Using Nora's vision sense, they identified 12 council members planning to overthrow Max during the next new moon. With her ability to see the truth of objects and his authority to act on it, they moved swiftly. Arrests, trials, evidence that couldn't be denied. Dane broke under questioning, revealing the full scope of the conspiracy. He'd been the architect, using the prophecy as a tool to keep Max distracted while he built his coalition. If Nora hadn't found the real translation, the coup would have succeeded. But she had found it, and together, she and Max dismantled the threat with surgical precision. Throughout it all, they worked in perfect synchronization. Her visions guiding his decisions, his strength protecting her while she used power that left her drained. They were partners in truth, two halves of something larger than either could be alone. On the 7th day, the day Nora's contract technically ended, Max called the remaining council together. This kingdom has been operating on fear and corruption for too long, he said, his voice carrying authority that needed no magic to enforce it. That ends now. We will transform from within, using new leadership and old wisdom together. And we will do it with transparency, with justice, and with the help of someone who sees truth where others see only shadows. He looked at Nora, standing beside him, and held out his hand. She took it without hesitation. Lady Nora of the Seer's Gift will be my partner in this transformation, Max continued, as my equal in leadership, my partner in decision-making, and his eyes found hers. As my mate, when she's ready to accept that bond fully. The council erupted in whispers. Nora felt the weight of dozens of stares, some curious, some skeptical. But Max's hand was warm in hers, and the mark on her wrist hummed with certainty. She turned to the council and spoke clearly. I grew up afraid of my gifts, hiding what I could do because people killed my mother for having visions. But I'm done hiding. This kingdom needs transparency and truth, and I'll help provide that however I can. Not because of prophecy or duty, but because I choose to. Because transformation requires people willing to face uncomfortable truths and change them. Well said, an older council member chimed in. And brave. The kingdom could use more bravery. Others nodded. Not everyone was convinced. Change never came easily. But it was a start. That evening, Max found Nora on the battlements, their spot now, where everything had begun to shift. It's been 7 days, he said, joining her. The contract's technically fulfilled, but you're staying? I am. She turned to face him. Though I have one condition. His eyebrows rose. My sister Lydia, I want her brought here, given the best healers, the best medicine, a real chance to recover. Already done, Max said. I sent people to collect her 3 days ago. She's in the healing wing right now, resting comfortably. Nora's eyes stung. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He pulled her close. She's your family, which makes her my family, too. And I take care of what's mine. I'm not yours officially, she teased. Not yet. He kissed her forehead. But I'm working on it. She laughed, the sound lighter than she'd felt in years. You're awfully confident. Well, you already won me over, in that market, with your terrible temper and complete disregard for who I was supposed to be. I'm betting I can do the same to you permanently. That's not how it happened, isn't it? His arms tightened around her. You made me believe in prophecies that bent toward hope instead of doom. That's a kind of magic more powerful than any mark. She looked up at him. This man who'd started as reconnaissance and become something infinitely more precious. I love you, she said, the words finally breaking free. I've been trying not to, trying to be practical and careful, but I do. I love you. Max's eyes blazed gold. Say that again. I love you. He kissed her breathless, lifting her off her feet, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, he said, I fell in love with you the moment you called me a waste of breath. I just didn't know it yet. Don't be ridiculous. Part of my charm. He set her down carefully. Let me do this right. I want to court you properly, give you time to be certain. But Nora, his voice roughened. For the record, you're it for me. The prophecy, the marks, they just confirmed what I already knew the moment you looked at me. No pressure, she said, but she was smiling. All the pressure. He grinned. I'm the Alpha King. I don't believe in going halfway. She pulled him down for another kiss, softer this time, sweeter, but it didn't stay sweet for long. His hands slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and she melted against him with a soft sound that made him groan. Nora. His voice was strained. If you keep making sounds like that, courting you properly is going to be significantly more difficult. Maybe I don't want to be courted properly. She traced her fingers along his jaw, feeling the tension there. Maybe I want... He kissed her again, deeper this time, walking her backward until her spine met the cold stone wall. His mouth traveled from her lips to her jaw to the sensitive spot below her ear that made her gasp. Tell me what you want, he murmured against her throat. You. The word came out breathless. All of you. He lifted her into his arms, a swift motion that made her gasp, and carried her inside. Later, they lay tangled together in his chambers, moonlight spilling across bare skin. Nora traced lazy patterns on Max's chest, feeling satisfied in a way she'd never experienced before. The marks, she said drowsily. Did you feel... Yes. His voice was filled with wonder. He lifted their wrists, where the marks still glowed faintly in the darkness. When I touched you there, it was like our magic was touching too. She shivered at the memory. The marks had amplified. Everything, every touch, every sensation magnified and shared between them until she couldn't tell where her pleasure ended and his began. That's going to be dangerous, she murmured. You mean it's going to be incredible. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Another thing to explore together. She smiled against his skin, feeling safe and chosen and utterly transformed. What are you thinking? Max asked after a long, comfortable silence, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. That I'm glad you knocked over my turnips. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Best accident I ever made. Second best, she corrected. The first was enduring my creative insults without getting offended. He rolled to face her, propping himself up on one elbow. I'd endure 1,000 insults if it meant ending up here with you. Nora reached up to trace the line of his jaw, feeling the rough stubble there. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges, enemies who didn't want change, hard decisions to make. But they'd face all of it together. The seer and the Alpha King, vision sense and blood sense. Two halves of a prophecy that had been about unity all along. She'd cursed him in a market square, and he'd smiled and asked for dinner. Now, lying in his arms with the marks on their wrists glowing softly in the darkness, Nora thought it was the best yes she'd ever given. Come on, Max said eventually, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Let's get dressed. We should check on your sister. You haven't seen her since we arrived. Then I'm feeding you properly. You haven't eaten in days. Stop telling me what to do. You love it. And the terrible truth was, she did. She loved his protectiveness, his intensity, the way he looked at her like she'd rearranged the stars. She loved his laugh and his scars, and the way he'd kissed every inch of her like she was something sacred. She loved him. Below them, the kingdom stretched out. Not perfect, but theirs to transform. And together, marked and bound and choosing each other every day, they would make it into something worthy of the magic that had brought them together. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.